When you turn on the news, when you see your friend, when you hear your friend, when you go on the social media, um, when you look up the news on the internet, everywhere is the same topic: is the coronavirus, how many people died, how many people are sick, how many people suffering and from this disease. And you see the numbers, you see the different reports, health reports, and it may become overwhelming, especially when you're stuck inside, um, when you can't go to work, when you can't go to uni. You do everything at home. There is self-isolation. You can't even invite your family friends over. And although some people do, I guess, but those who adhere to the um, policy, adhere to the rules of self-isolation, they don't do it. And although all our attention is focused right now on this problem, coronavirus, I want you to think about something more important than this. You may ask, what is more important right now than solving this issue that kills a lot of people and make a lot of people sick? It may be harsh to say, but the truth is, not today, not tomorrow, or maybe not next week, but after a few years, I will die. That's the truth. Like, the death will come at any time. Now you have this body, you have the consciousness. I hope people who are watching, at least they have some intelligence to think about something higher than these problems that we have in the world. Something meaningful. What is the meaning of life? Ask yourself these questions. I'm encouraging you to think about this. I encourage you to do it in my last video, where I gave example of the sinking submarine. So we are trying to solve these temporary issues, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't. I'm saying that we spend a lot of energy, a lot of time, we divert all our attention to solving these temporary problems, while the permanent problem remains. How do you solve the problem of death? It's scary when you think about it. Although the whole society is organized in such a way that you may forget about it, right? You try to go to work every day, you get up, you take bath, you put on the nice clothes, you have breakfast, you go to work, you come back. Now, obviously, people stay at home, but they still work. Some people do, some people maybe not. And then you have family relationships, right? You have family connections, relatives that you can talk to, friends, although they are all speaking nevertheless about this coronavirus problem. And somehow or other, even in this situation when people are dying, right? We don't question ourselves about the meaning of life. Although you see people die every day, you may ask yourself, but what's the whole point? Why am I living? Not today, but tomorrow, you know? But we are put in so much fear by social media, by government reports, by biased reports, or like different journals. So they put in that fear in us, and one of the social psychologists or cognitive psychologists, I think his name is Steven Pinker, and he said that you're not going to solve the situation by just putting that fear into people, because we have that fight or flight response. So once you are scared of something, especially if it's really, really dangerous, is something threatening your life, you might start to avoid, or you become stunned, you become shocked. Like right now, people are shocked. What to do? There is no solution. There is no vaccination. How to stop that virus, you know how to, if once you get it, how can you get rid of it? Although many people recover from it, I'm not here to also entrust that fear in you. But the point is, you need to have a plan, right? And the problem is death. That's the main problem. It's not the coronavirus itself. Coronavirus may cause death in a very small percentage of people in reality. Not like the social media exaggerates it. That like you because there's so many news, you might think, oh, like 9 out of 10 people die because of coronavirus. No, it's very small percentage of people. So what is the purpose of life? That's the question we want to ask ourselves right now. What's the meaning of life? You may say, I want to be happy. That's a really good start. All right. So if you want to be happy, you strive for happiness. You try to do everything. You try to minimize distress, and you try to achieve happiness. Now, there is a problem. Again, one research, actually, there's been a lot of research done on the topic of happiness and how people perceive happiness, how people experience happiness. And actually, the research says that people who want to be happy in life, who strive towards happiness with all their hearts, actually are less happy than those who don't. Try to think about it, right? If you're striving, you want to be happy, and you do everything. You try to get a good job, you try to get a lot of money, buy a nice house, have a good family, or whatever people do now, have many girlfriends. I don't know what people are up to today, but anyway, whatever you may strive towards and thinking that will make me happy, firstly, you encounter so many problems on that path, right? Just before you become the top manager of your company, the CEO, you have to undergo so many struggles that it's actually questionable whether you achieved happiness after, because you've been going through a lot of stuff. Now every third person is struggling from anxiety and stress. That's our struggle for material happiness. That's what causes it. And that's the problem. So the ancient Vedic knowledge, the sages from India, they mentioned it 5,000 years ago, actually. They predicted it. They said, this is the nature, or that's the human nature, to strive towards material happiness. And once you start doing that, once you strive towards material happiness, you actually feel more and more distressed. And that's what modern psychology approves of. They've done research, they tested a lot of people, and they found out, yeah, those who didn't have a happiness as the main goal of their life actually were more happy than those who did. That's a very interesting finding, right? Because you want to be happy, but the more you want to be happy, the more distressed, the more anxious you become. What is the problem, right? And we gotta seek knowledge from someone who knows what's the problem and what's the solution. And that's very interesting, because we tend to think that scientists are the ones, or people who do research, people who win Nobel Prizes, they know what's the point of life, what's the meaning of life. We entrust ourselves in them. We put our trust in them. So, but they cannot answer this question. They just say, look, the more you strive towards material happiness, the less happy you become. But what they say is you have to make your life meaningful. Very interesting. I brought this point up in my last video, and I want to say again today the same point, that we have to find that information from someone else. We have to seek that information from someone else. Because guess what? Another research in psychology shows, or it's actually part of social psychology research, that shows that people who are actually every one of us, right? is a confident fool. In one way or another, depends on the topic we think ourselves to be expert in, but we are confident fools. Why? Because actually 99% of information that you know, that you think you know, you cannot prove. You don't have facts for that. You just heard it from someone else, whether it's been taught to you in school, whether it's been taught to you by your parents, your community, your society, or your religion. So there's many places. So actually all this knowledge that we have in our life, it's all coming from other people, from the social connections. So we can't really prove many things that we think we know. We just heard it from someone else. But another interesting thing is the less information you have about something, the less facts you have about certain theory, certain idea you have in your head, the more confident you are that this is true. So, for example, you might think that you are, you know a lot about finance management, how to make money, how to spend your money wisely, how to run the economy of your family. But in truth, the more confident you are, the less likely it is to be true. Because actually those people who don't know much about financial management, they think they know a lot. And that's where the problem is. So we're confident that we know something, but in reality we don't. Right? So we don't really have facts, we just assume. So it's kind of faith that we have in many things around us. That's why I was mentioning that association is very important, who you get the knowledge from. Now, I mentioned to you before, if you're intelligent enough, right? So if you think yourself being higher than the animals, for example, in consciousness, right? That's what makes us different from animals, right? We can think, we can cognitively interpret information that we see, that we touch through our senses. Now, the animals, they can do it to a certain extent, but they can't really process thoughts as deeply as humans can do, as elaborately as we can. They can't really speak in such a complicated language as we do, and so on. But we are similar in one way, right? We have needs. So there are animal needs like eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So that's what makes us similar. Now, if you do all of these things, if you fulfill these human needs like eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, at least you're on the animal level. That's what I can assure you of. Now, we want to go higher. We want to use our consciousness, use our cognitive abilities to understand who we are. That's what makes us human. And the sages from the India, 5,000 years ago, they described this process. They said you should start by cognitively understanding who you actually are, asking yourself a question: who am I? Am I a head? Am I these shoulders? Am I a nose? Am I an arm? And as you go, you can come to your mind. So once, of course, I'm not my head. My head is part of my body. That's why I say my head or my arm. You don't say I head or I arm. No, because it's your body. Let's be honest, that's not you. And actually, you can say I'm my mind, right? But that's actually not true also. Why? Because mind has 3 states: wakefulness, dreaming, which is like a shallow sleep, and also deep sleep. And in deep sleep, we don't control ourselves. You don't even remember. Like you go to sleep and you sleep like 6, 9 hours, whatever you sleep, and you just wake up. Imagine you slept for 6 hours. Your body functioned for 6 hours on its own. You didn't think about breathing, your stomach digesting the food, your dinner, your blood running through the body. It all happens automatically. And not only that, your mind is switched off during this time, but you're still alive. You're still you. So by questioning yourself who we are, you have to really be analytical. And actually, that's the difference between the scientists and the sages. What's the difference? Scientists try to use material tools to find spiritual energy, to define spiritual energy. But it's not possible. You have to get transcendental knowledge to understand what is material, what is spiritual. That is the definition of the transcendental knowledge. It tells you what's the difference between matter and spirit. You can get it only from the people who know about this. That's the difference between the modern science and the ancient spiritual science. Why? Because the ancient spiritual science has been passed on from one great sage to another as part of the knowledge. They received it from above, like there was the revelation which was passed on directly from God. Whether you follow one tradition or another, you may have heard about revelation. Now, what the scientists do, they use the method of induction. They try to study the question, they try to study matter and spirit by collecting different observations and then generalizing according to these observations. But they will never be successful in finding finding the difference between matter and spirit. Why? Because our senses that we use to collect the observations, to collect the data, are imperfect. Right? Our eyesight is imperfect. It's a human error. Everywhere is going to be human error. Plus, we're using the tools which were made by humans, which are also defective. So we cannot find the absolute truth using the defective method. We can only find the absolute truth using the absolute method. So once you analyze that, yes, I'm not my body, I'm not my mind, that's where the sages tell us, within your heart, there is a spirit soul. It's a spiritual spark, the size of if you take a tip of a hair and divide it by 10,000, that's how small it is. If you want to measure it, at least to have like some idea of what it is. But you can't really measure it because it's spiritual, it's different, it's not made of 5 material elements. And so the sages say that there are 5 material elements, like you've probably heard: earth, water, air, fire, and ether. So the soul is not made out of any of these elements. But everything around us is made out of these 5 elements, if you think about it. That's the difference between spirit and matter. Now, the spirit soul is also the sign of life within us. So what makes the difference between the dead body and the body which is alive? That's only the spirit soul. One may say it's a consciousness, yet the sages describe that consciousness is just a symptom of a soul. It's not actually a soul, right? Because when you're in deep sleep, you're not conscious. You don't understand what's happening. When you're in a dreaming state, you think that some things happen to you that in reality, when you wake up, you realize you were not flying in the sky, or you were not running away from dogs or whatever you were dreaming about. So actually, consciousness is just the symptom of a soul. In deep sleep, there is actually no sign of consciousness, only your breathing, which is not really a sign of consciousness. Therefore, the only difference is that spirit soul. Now, if you're a scientist, or if you're a doctor, you've studied medicine, you may protest. You may say it's actually electrical impulse within the heart that makes your heart beat, and that makes you alive. Okay, if that was only the electrical impulse, then when someone dies, I know that medical staff, the surgeons, they use this electric shock to put that electric impulse back into your heart, so your heart starts beating again. Yet this doesn't work all the time. If that was true, if that really depended on that electrical impulse, that shock you give should always work, right? So, and where does this electrical impulse come from anyway? You know the laws. If you know the laws of physics, you understand that the energy can be only transferred, cannot be produced, right? Can only transfer the energy. So actually, this world, we don't create things. These cars, right? We don't create them. We just manipulate all the elements that are given to us in such a way that we make a car, and then we use different tools, use different engines, right, that work, and then through the mechanism they convert the energy into one single source, and then you put it inside the car, and then you can start the car. So there is electric impulse. Now you press the button. Shouldn't show the key anymore, but yeah, you just press the button and the car starts. But actually think about it. The car itself, right? It was made by someone. That's the point. It just didn't exist before humans made it. So why we think that this body, which is like perfectly made, look, I was born, then I started growing, I started learning the language by myself, just like naturally. We call it naturally. Whatever we think we can explain, we call it nature. And whatever we can't explain, we call it happened by chance. So let's become more intelligent. Let's become smarter in our perception of the world, in our understanding of the world. You have to accept today or tomorrow, sooner or later, that the mechanism inside your body is working perfectly because it has a source of energy that's pumping it. It's not just the heart. It's not just the engine in the car, right? You gotta give that impulse. Someone has to press the button so the car starts. So that soul is giving all the energy. Once the soul leaves the body, you can't revive that body. When someone dies, and doctors try to bring that person back to life using that electric shock, not always works. Why? It should work. You put in the electric impulse back in the heart, just doesn't work, because the soul already left the body. You may keep this body for some time, and you may tell the general public that in the future we will find a way how we can revive people or how we can make people live forever. But it's all dreams. It's all not true. Everything in this world is gonna be born, gonna grow, deteriorate, and die. So that's the nature. It's temporary. So is this material body. But the soul is eternal. The great sages of India, they tell us the soul is eternal. It is very important to understand. That's why we don't understand as kids when we come to our parents and we ask them what happens to us when we die. And the parents are shocked because they also don't know. They asked their parents about it, and the parents said, well, look, you just died. It becomes black screen, like when you go to the cinema and you watch the subtitles and it's a black screen. That's it, it's over, it's done, you're finished. Look, and then you tell the same to your kids. So we as kids, we don't know. It's like, oh, it's gonna be over, but we don't understand. Try to explain to a kid that, like, when he's gonna die, it's gonna be over, it's gonna be finished, he's not gonna exist anymore. He won't understand because he understands naturally that I have that desire, I have that nature of living forever. And that's the nature of the soul. It lives forever. You can't die, you can't dissect it. So this is very important while we are in this situation. This coronavirus problem is killing people. And we have to accept it, that people are dying. We have to see it. Yes, indeed, you know. One day I may die. You have to understand that. Once you understand it, you can go deeper in terms of understanding who you are. And I hope I really encouraged you today to question yourself. What is the truth? What is the absolute truth? And in my next video, I'll probably discuss about something even higher. As I said, that this car that is parked outside of my house was created by someone. Similarly, the soul was created by someone. My body came from my parents, but where does the soul come from? That's a very interesting question. So thank you for listening, and I hope you stay safe. Yes, the body is temporary, but we still have to look after ourselves, after our relatives. And I'll see you soon in our next video.